Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while. I'm glad to come back to you guys with another franchise ranking. And today we're going to go with Iron Man trilogy. Now, Iron Man is probably my favorite superhero without powers. He just uses his gadgets and his wits. There's other ones like Batman and that, but I think Iron Man is actually my favorite. And they did a really good job at taking this character, and it was a fairly unknown character. People might have heard of him before in the comic books and that, but he's never made it to the big screen. So this was a big deal when 2008 when the first one came out, and it also kick-started the whole MCU. So very important film. So I'm ready to dive in and give you my ranking. Let's go. Coming in last place, third place, we got Iron Man 2. Now, before I used to think that this movie was slightly better than 3, but on this last rewatched, it's really been going down the pegs as of lately. It's not a terrible film, but it does have its problems, and mainly for me, it'd be with the villain, the Russian dude. Is it Ivanko or something like that? He's not that memorable. The only thing you really remember about him is his whips, and it's a really weird weapon choice I find for to go against Iron Man, like two electric whips. That's the only thing memorable about him. He really doesn't have much to do in this film. He's mostly tinkering with stuff. We get one scene with him at the NASCAR race or the Formula race, whatever that race, and pretty much one scene at the end with him taking on War Machine and Iron Man. And they're not that great of scenes, to be honest. And I feel like he is the weakest villain in this trilogy. Also, Terrence Howard didn't come back to reprise his role as a Rhodey or War Machine. He wasn't War Machine in the first one yet. And we get Don Cheadle to replace him in this one, and he does a fairly good job. I like Don Cheadle. It's just that I think Terrence had a certain type of charisma or something to him that I just liked a bit better in the first movie. I think he played Rhodey perfectly, and I would have loved to see him return, but it's just too bad for him that we didn't get to see that. And I bet he wishes now that he would have returned after how big the MCU has become. And when we start talking about Tony in this one, he's getting a really to be really bad alcoholic in this. He's getting poisoned by his own machine that's keeping him alive. His little arc reactor in his chest. It's slowly poisoning him, and he's going through a rough patch in this one. Like, he was always had the persona of a rock star in the first movie, but this time he's almost living like it with the partying and the just not caring about anything, and it's really hurting his image. I didn't I didn't mind that part about the movie. I like that it was like a ticking time bomb in his chest for him getting poisoned, and he knew there was had to be a cure or he was done for because the time was ticking. And then we got the big one, Justin Hammer. He's like the other villain in this film. He gets a lot of hate, and I never quite understood it before. I was like, yeah, he's not the best or whatever, but I was like, he's okay. So when I popped on this movie, I was like, let's see what everybody's talking about. And yeah, he is annoying as hell. I didn't really notice it before, but man, this dialogue is terrible. The dialogue in this film is great for everybody except for him. I do like the character himself, the way he acts in that, and like his ego and just the style he talks. I don't mind. It's just the dialogue that he was like saying absolutely, and like the way he repeats himself all the time. It's like, what? I do like that little dance he does though on the stage of the expo. That was pretty cool. But besides that, yeah, we could have did without Justin Hammer because you got him and you got the Russian, and neither one of them are real good villains. But on a side note, some positives. The soundtrack to this is great. We got AC/DC, Queen. These are essentially rock star films for music wise, so that was always a bonus to me as I'm a big rock slash metal fan. And we also got to talk about the Black Widow scenes. Like, I think those are the best parts of the movie, sadly, when this is an Iron Man 2 film. But yeah, we get a little bit more of an introduction to her in this film, Scarlett Johansson, and the scene with her and Happy going into the building and taking out those all the security is probably my favorite scene of this whole film. Happy's happy just to take out one, and he it takes him forever when he looks over and she killed like 12 people or took them down anyway. One guy's even hanging. And yeah, that's definitely the most badass parts of this film to me. Not a terrible movie, just last place in this ranking. Coming in the second place, we got Iron Man 3, directed by Shane Black. I would say that this is probably the darkest film to date, dealing with the themes it deals with and stuff like that. Tony is dealing with PTSD essentially. He's having anxiety attacks and that after the events of Avengers in New York, and it's really just screwing with him. And this just gives Tony more of a human aspect, like a little bit more realistic, I guess. We don't usually see this kind of stuff in comic book movies, so that was cool to see. We also get the Mandarin in this one, which a lot of people didn't like the little bait and switch they did with him. I think his character is the best villain out of this whole trilogy if he would have actually been that character. I'm not so much mad that they switched him to the other guy, Ulrich Killian, to be the real Mandarin. I think that wasn't a smart choice, but I didn't hate it. It's just that the guy who was playing the Mandarin with the beard there, when he was on TV and that was like pretty dark and intense stuff, and I almost wish that that was actually what was going on. Because Ulrich Killian himself, I think he's a fairly mediocre bad guy. His intentions in that is pretty much just revenge. He wants to get back at Tony for what he did back in '99. And yeah, I love Guy Pearce, but not his best role. I do like the orange shit in people that makes them explode. That was a pretty cool concept too, and especially when Pepper gets infected with it, you're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? You know, it really built up the tension, I guess. I also enjoyed all the new upgrades to the suit, how he can just put out his arm and it will come to him. I think that was awesome. And the plane scene there where everybody's falling out of the plane and he has to rescue all of them. It's like probably one of my favorite scenes out of this whole trilogy. It's really well made. One thing I really didn't care for though in this movie, one of the stupidest things, is Tony giving out his address to the news or whatever for the Mandarin to destroy his house essentially. Like, that was just the dumbest thing ever. There was really no logic behind that whatsoever. Probably the dumbest thing that happened in this trilogy, but it's just a small thing in this film that I nitpick. And finally, I just want to say War Machine was way cooler than Iron Patriot. Just put that out there. And yeah, this is a pretty good movie. Not my favorite, but I think it does outdo Part 2. But coming in the first place in this ranking is obviously the OG Iron Man 1. It's actually one of my favorite movies in all the MCU. It's top 5 material. This movie is just written really well. It has amazing characters, amazing actors portraying those characters. Everything's just done beautifully. The directing, everything. This is the film that kicked off the MCU in a big way and really did wonders for Marvel. This one we start with Tony being more of a business guy. He still has that rock star persona, but he's more in with making money for his company and, you know, selling weapons until he gets captured by the terrorists in the cave. And man, I love the cave parts. Again, it just made for a more real situation than what we usually get in these comic book films with the terrorists and that. And it was just a real slap in the face to Tony once he's seen that they were all using his weapons. And this was pretty much the moment where he realized he's supplying weapons to the bad guys as well. So Jon Favreau did an excellent job at keeping this movie grounded. His directing is pretty phenomenal, and he continues to do great work to this day. Like I said, everybody in this film felt perfectly casted, especially Robert Downey Jr. You can't picture anybody else as Iron Man today. He's just perfectly casted. But so is Pepper Potts. And I even enjoyed Jeff Bridges as, was it Obadiah? He didn't have the best arc. I don't think had enough screen time or enough time to really show his intentions in that. It was a little bit rushed on the villain side, like all these films. I think the villain part is the weakest part of this whole trilogy. But this is still done fairly well, good enough. And I love Jeff Bridges, you know, the Big Lebowski. So that was a bonus. This whole film is just packed with kick-ass scenes, whether you're talking about the Jericho bomb that goes off at the first, to the cave scenes, to Tony testing out all of his suits, and you get a lot of comedy in there too, but it's not overdone. It's done perfectly, I think, with the action and the comedy. This yeah, just a ton of cool scenes, whether you got him flying around or all the action scenes with him fighting are all pretty kick-ass. And it's just kind of ironic that Tony realizes there's bad people out there with their hands on his weapons. So he makes the ultimate weapon, this Iron Man suit, and it is badass even in this first adaptation. The movie just doesn't drag at all. They mix drama, comedy, action, perfectly well, adventure, like all that perfectly well. It's so well rounded, and the movie just moves at a perfect pace for me. And it was also really cool to even get little bits of Shield here and there, trying to recruit him in the early stages. He doesn't want nothing to do with it. And it's kind of a running theme throughout this trilogy. And again, we got a kick-ass soundtrack. We got AC/DC, Suicidal Tendencies. We got Black Sabbath in the credits and in the trailer. It's just like a rock star film, just like Tony Stark is. His persona is essentially a rock star. So it just fits perfectly with this. This is an origin story, and I'm a huge fan of origin stories and starting out, and I think this is one of the better ones ever made. It's just a great film. Like I said, it's in my top 5 MCU films, and it was the one that pretty much started it all, which is highly impressive. The only little negative, like I said, would probably be the villains. They're not the most fleshed out villains, but we took this character Iron Man that was pretty much a nothing before. Only major comic book fans knew about him, and they made him accessible for the whole world, and now he's loved and cherished and missed, for that matter. But anyway, guys, that is my ranking. I would like to know how you guys rank these 3 films down below in the comments. Do you got the same ranking as me, 1, 3, 2, or do you like to mix them up? Do you find 2 better than 3? I'd have it hard to believe that you have the first one not in first place, but it could happen. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I'll be sure to come back at you with some more franchise rankings as soon as I can. And thanks for watching, guys.